You can't control the market, and once you become comfortable with just working and within your own sphere of influence, I think life becomes a bit easier. You've got to be able to have a tolerance for risk, and you see the people who are entrepreneurial, they're always wanting to learn more. So I think that's one of the biggest things is, how do I understand more? How do I learn on something new? Work hard for people to understand that the clients and the customer at the end of the day, that's who you need to focus on, but also work well with your internal stakeholders. Sometimes you've actually got to look the opposite way that the crowd is looking. I think that's really important.
What is success and how are you working towards achieving it?
It's a good question. Look, I think at the end of the day,
private markets investments are investors can find some real value. I find the best way to learn is learn from someone who's done it before and given it a go. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, host of Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining me here today. On these podcast sessions, we're going to talk through how certain investors have navigated the bumpy road of investing, whether it be through business or investments in general. Thanks for listening today. Welcome back to the Grow Your Wealth podcast, the show dedicated to bringing you insightful conversations with industry leaders to help you navigate the complex world of finance and investments. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we have a very special guest joining us, Ed Burns. Ed brings a wealth of experience to the table with a remarkable 24-year career in financial services. He worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, including Ernst & Young, Dresner, Credit Suisse, Platinum Asset Management here in Sydney, and since 2002, he's been a key part of UBS, a leading global wealth manager. His deep understanding spans across various asset classes, including ASX and international listed shares, indices, alternative assets, commodities, private markets, FX, and managed funds. We'll explore some of these key lessons he's learned along the way. And without waiting any longer, let's dive into our conversation with Ed. Thanks for coming on, Ed. How's things?
thanks, Travis. Well, no, but getting back into the swing of it after a great summer.
Sounds like you did it tough skiing.
It was hard. It was cold, but it was great.
Fair enough. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Can you give us a summary of who you are and what you currently focus on from a business perspective?
Sure, absolutely. Well, after growing up with humble beginnings in Adelaide, which is like a big country town, moved through London and then to Sydney, where I thought that the interest in markets was going to be ignited. So my career now has been at UBS, as you say, it's been over 20 years, and it's been a great journey. Obviously, working with you previously, which was fantastic. I learned a lot, but just being in a dynamic markets-based, business has kept me engaged and interested. And the thing I like about markets is that things are always moving, and there's no kind of one opinion that's right. You can have two people with different views, the uncertainty of markets, I think, makes it each day pretty exciting.
People have different views, but your view's always right.
Correct.
Is that how it goes?
They may have a different view, but mine's always correct.
Yeah. A lot of people are interested how you sort of Adelaide. How do you make the jump from Adelaide to London? Did you just wing it? Or you finish uni and then you lined up a job, or how did that happen? Yeah,
it's an interesting point. Funnily enough, a lot of my friends, in Adelaide, you tend to either migrate to Melbourne because the culture is very similar. And at the time, I had a lot of friends who'd moved to London, just given the ease to work over there and the familiarity. So being a small town, I worked in an accounting firm. I really, sort of had a passion for markets, and there were no investment banks at the time or kind of financial services firms of any size in Adelaide. So you kind of had a choice. You could either move to Melbourne or Sydney. I took the decision the leap of faith to move to London. Quit my job, went over there with kind of nothing and grew up very quickly, which was great. And I thought if you're going to go anywhere, one of the biggest financial centres would be the place to go.
Did you have a job before you left, or you just landed and knocked on doors?
I did not. So it was very stressful when my Australian dollars were running out, and just got onto the phone to recruiters and just harassed and ended up getting a job in banking, which was good before my money ran out.
What was the Aussie dollar like back then?
It was about.
It's always bad. It was compared to the.
It was two. It was 2-1 at the time. So not coming with many Aussie dollars, I burnt through them pretty quickly. But just in time, I got a job, so that kind of got me back on.
No, that's brilliant. How do we take a step back and go through your education? So where did it start? Primary school?
Yeah, so primary school was a local primary school, in Mitcham, in Adelaide, just near Hawthorn, and that was great, to go to the local school there, and like every kid does, in the 80s, played cricket and footy, and and spent a lot of time outdoors. And then in year 5, I moved to Pulteney Grammar, which was just a boys' school in the city, and just continued to sport was my thing when I was a kid, so loved AFL and cricket and anything else that I could play. And it was a great school. I've got, great friends there, and, spent my kind of senior years there all through to year 12 and had a lot of fun and learned a lot, which was great. And then went to uni in Adelaide. Post that, went to Flinders University and I actually did an arts degree and psychology. At the time, I think I wanted to be a sports psychologist, and then realised pretty quickly that probably wasn't going to pay the bills. And then transitioned across to commerce. My father was a financial advisor, so that's where I sort of had the interest in markets, and did commerce, thinking that might give me some more opportunities.
Very good. And you played a bit of footy over there?
I did, maybe not as well as you, but I did play a lot of footy. Played for club footy for Sturt, which is one of the local teams over there, which was great. I loved footy. As a little kid, I sort of thought I'd play AFL, but then realised you had to put a lot of work in.
There's not many good footballers from Adelaide. Why is that?
Well, they all leave, you see. So a few of them have made it through, but
it's an awesome footy town.
Yeah.
Okay, now talking about how people influence you via the journey, do you want to list a couple of people that, turn the dial for you and why?
Yeah, so look, I think first and foremost, my parents. I think, my dad, he was an advisor, had his own business, which was quite entrepreneurial. So I kind of learned that from him. And also my mother, we had a nursing home as a family, and she ran the books. So I remember sitting around the table and watching her do the accounting for that as a family business. So, they always looked at them as working very hard and thought that's what I needed to do, and sort of hard work enabled you to do well. And I was really grateful of being able to be sent to a good school that gave me an opportunity. So I always thought that hard work led to opportunity. I wanted to kind of pay them back, in that. So parents first and foremost, and then a really good, one of Dad's, best friends growing up, and a really good family friend. He was a bit of a mentor. He was a very successful businessman in Adelaide. He ran his own HR company, and I always saw him as someone who was incredibly successful. He taught me a lot about business and what you needed to do, and the importance of networking and working hard. So they were probably the two earliest influences.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. And then, so talking about the second person, what was it specifically? Like, was it his personality, his drive, was there something specific that sort of took on board?
He was very driven. He was very confident as well, which I think he was a very engaging individual. Always had time for people. He told me the benefits of networking and getting to know people, and also backing yourself. So he was. It was really about having confidence in your own ability and going and if you wanted something, going and getting it. So that was sort of the key lessons I learned from him about, self-confidence, motivation, and then networking.
Gotcha. Talking on that networking front, so you went to boys' school, private school in Adelaide, and then to uni. You still have mates through uni and high school, and so how does that help you out these days, you think?
Yeah, it was great. I had a really great group of friends. We all played, footy and cricket together. We were very competitive, so we always wanted, the key was lifting each other up. So it was all about surrounding yourself with people who have the same kind of views, and we're very focused on doing well in whether it was academics and sport. And I'm still really good friends with them. They were sort of the best man and groomsmen at my wedding. We still catch up. They're all in completely different fields. All have been really successful. We share kind of love of sport and passion, but I think the support's been great. And, as much as we've done different things, I think everyone respects each other's ability. So I think that having, a good group of friends around you that you can bounce ideas off is really important.
Yeah. I think that's critical in a way when you talk about networking. It starts pretty young in your life. Like it starts early days with your mates because everyone goes a different path. But it's sort of the lesson of you're better off being nice to everyone because you never know down the track. Who knows, right?
You might need them. Well, it helped me in London. I had to, a good friend of mine, he was very ambitious. He moved to London. He was the first one to go there. And I arrived with nothing, and I was, kind of sleeping, on his floor at his house in Fulham, and he had 10 other people there, but you just have to leverage those, those relationships, and he was happy to host me for a while until I got my own place. So you're right.
Gotcha. Now moving on to some pivotal moments in your life. So making the step from presumably Adelaide to London was a big call, but is there any pivotal moments in your life that you think turned the dial?
Yeah, I think the biggest one would have been, I had a good job at Ernst & Young. I was in corporate finance, and at that point they wanted me to do my professional year, or the PY, which was tough. And at that point I'd taken the view that I didn't want to be an accountant. And I think the decision to quit that really, great job and go to London, I was still living at home at that point, so I hadn't, really had to fend for myself. So I think taking that leap of faith, going there with no job, to set up my own bank accounts, cook my own food, do my own stuff. I think that in hindsight, the ability for me to grow up and learn really quickly. So sometimes it's that taking a risk. Maybe at the time I didn't think it was a risk, but looking back now, it was a big risk. So I think that was probably the most important thing, and it gave me exposure to, the markets in London, which are enormous. So
yeah, gotcha. Any other periods of life? Getting married, maybe?
Getting married was great. That settled me down. And I think having kids is really important. I think one thing, and you would agree, I think with kids, it changes your perspective on life a little bit, and you realise that
your life's over, basically.
That's right. There are more important things, but I think it allows you to be more grounded at work and probably more rational in some of the thought processes, and enables you to sometimes sit back and have better perspectives on work.
It's great. Now, in business, what drives you? What makes you get out of bed in the morning?
I've always been very competitive. So as a kid, it was competition in sport, but I think that's resonated through everything. So it's more about, and also, paying my parents back, wanting to make sure that I was always the best sort of version of myself that I could be. So it was really the competitive spirit to do the right thing by people. I always believed in integrity is really important. So doing what you say you will do and helping, they're the main drive.
Yeah, I mean, let's have a chat about your current role, right? But your current role, you're at the front line. You're doing structuring, you're doing trades, which to a degree is competitive because all investment banking is competitive. But do you want to just touch on what you do a typical day when you come into the office?
Yeah, so typical day, obviously I had the pleasure of sitting next to you for a long period of time, which was great. So it's really, seeing what's happened overnight, chatting to colleagues about what you think of the topics of the day, how some of the news from overnight is going to, A, impact the market, B, impact particular stocks, and then really thinking about what clients do we need to speak to that may have an interest in those stocks, or what opportunities can we generate from that. So each day is different, which is great. And everyone has a different view or opinion. So it's about getting as many different ideas from people and then speaking to clients and seeing where we can create a solution or an opportunity for them. I think that's what keeps things interesting, that every day is kind of different.
Yeah, got you. And what hours would you be working? For someone young listening, what does investment banking entail? Yeah,
look, I mean, the beauty of markets is that you tend not to have too many weekends, which is great because the markets are, Monday to Friday. But generally, it's kind of 7. With kids, I'm probably a little bit later than I used to be, but certainly that it's sort of 7:30 starts, seeing what's happened overnight. And then, we're lucky enough that we don't have to work like the bankers, all through the night. So it's probably 6:30 where you can kind of peel back. But it's a great day because once the market opens, it's fast and dynamic.
Yeah, we still like that about that sort of early morning 7:30. It gives you an hour just to catch up, and by the time the markets get up and running and other clients and people turn up, you're ready to go.
Yeah,
you just got to do that pre-work.
Correct.
Now, a lot of what you do is often dealing with entrepreneurs. You got friends who are entrepreneurs. If you were to have a look at what you've seen through your career, what advice would you give to someone taking the leap of faith? In a way, you did it from Ernst & Young, jumping to London. But what do you see sort of critical to taking the jump from a big entity out into the entrepreneurial world?
I think you've got to be able to have a tolerance for risk. I think you've got to be able to take on risk. And I think to have the mindset around how do I grow is really important. I think it's not a lot of, they talk about sort of growth and fixed mindset. So I think that's really important. And you see the people who are entrepreneurial, they're always wanting to learn more. So I think that's one of the biggest things is how do I understand more? How do I learn on something new? And I think always challenging yourself is really important. If you look at the people, and you're a good example of that, you took a leap of faith leaving banking and you had a curious mind and you saw a gap in the market where you could fill a particular need. So I think it's confidence in your own ability. It's wanting to take on understanding risk and taking on risk and then backing yourself, I think, are the key things.
Yeah. Talking about back to your role again. So alternative assets is the flavour of the month. Obviously, that's the business I'm focused on. A lot of people don't realise structured product is a genuine alternative asset, and it's a bucket at iPartners that we do look at, and that's your key space, right? And so, if you got a view on how your product suite fits into that alternative asset spectrum and sort of asset allocation.
Yeah, it's a good point. It does, it enhances, I guess, a portfolio. That's really what it does, which is like what alternative assets are supposed to do. And they tend not to be correlated with direct equity market returns. So it's really how do we provide a solution for people that can kind of augment an existing portfolio, whether it's an increase in yield they're looking for, or it might be they want to truncate downside. So it's really about how do we add some of these features to a portfolio that generally is reasonably delta one in the way it behaves. The structures that we put together remove that kind of notion of delta one, so you don't always need markets moving in your favour. You might be able to generate a yield from a market that's moving sideways,
Sure.
Or down, depending on what happens, or you might be able to protect a particular position. So it's thinking about your markets in a slightly different way.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now back to the episode. I think that's the key, is it's often non-linear payoffs, right? You can actually have a positive payoff when the market does nothing. Yeah. That's the interesting thing about sort of tailored solutions and structured product.
Yeah.
Which is your world. Was once mine, but no longer. Now, some bumps in the road.
Yes.
Tell us 2 or 3 things when it sort of went to custard, didn't turn out how you thought, and sort of how you bounced back from it.
Yeah, well, I the biggest one, and you would have gone through, I think was the GFC in 2008. I think a pretty hairy time for most people. A lot of the being in the derivatives and structured product space, a lot of the dislocations in markets meant that a lot of the structures that were put in place didn't work as well as we would have hoped for some investors, and you felt like at that point that banking in general was facing a bit of an existential crisis, really, particularly around derivatives. So at that point, we probably all thought that our careers were going to be reasonably, short-lived. So I think through that bump, it was really just, continuing to stay really focused, rethinking the product suite, understanding what had happened, and if that happens again, how do we kind of rebuild from that. And it was, and you remember we worked together. There were some slow years there for a while where people lost faith in some of the structures, but it was about reinventing a lot of those ideas and those trades, I think. And, there'll always be demand for, as I said, alternate assets. And that was certainly one of the bigger bumps that
arguably it was the best area of, investment banking, financial service to be working in, right? Because the nature of, derivatives and structured product, the payoff can work if markets are going up or down, sideways. And so if you're prepared to be creative, take a view on the market, you can actually come up with, trades that work regardless of circumstances. And I think that's what happened post GFC. The payoffs and profiles just changed. Yeah. People were nimble and they just changed how they did things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what about flipping to the positive side? Key learnings. If you were to look down at yourself in 20 or 30 years' time, what are you going to say?
Yeah, well, I think...
Or look at yourself when you were 20 years of age. What would you have told yourself?
I think the things you learn as you mature through is to, remain calm, be rational, think really broadly about... and I've learned lots from, yourself and other people I've worked with where you've seen the way people react in specific situations. And I think the key learnings are really... integrity, do what you say you're going to do the right thing by people, be honest, work hard for people, understand that the clients and the customer at the end of the day, that's who you need to focus on, but also work well with your internal stakeholders. So work with people internally, collaborate across businesses and be curious about other parts of the business, because I think you'll always find that you might be able to make connections somewhere, or you might speak to a client who has a different need in a different part of the business, and you can refer through. So it's I've learned a lot, learned to and learned that there are things out of your control. So I think the hardest thing is you can't control the market, and once you become comfortable with just working and within your own sphere of influence, I think life becomes a bit easier.
Yeah. When you touch on a critical point in the workplace, right, the internal stakeholder at times is critical as the external, right? Because investment banking can be an aggressive industry, can be competitive. And so you've got to create an environment where you can get along with people and achieve objectives and enjoy the workplace.
Yeah.
And so there's a skill in that in itself, and it's not as easy as it seems.
Yeah, it's hard to navigate. I mean, we're in a lucky position because we get to work with different parts of the bank, and I think that's actually really helped because you get to learn, new skills and understand new people. But you're right, I think you can't work in a silo. You can for a period of time, but I think over time that doesn't work. So I think it's really making sure that you get to know as many people within the bank as possible.
I think that's key. Like, I think back to my time, large organisation, it's the internal networking. You got to develop rapport and relationship with your colleagues internally, because sometimes you'll be asking for a favour, sometimes you'll be doing a favour. It's a bit of a give and take. And so even though it's an aggressive industry, in a way it's a bit like a sporting team. You kind of all got to get along. There's an end game, an end goal. That's what you're working to. Yeah. And sort of you can't have people focusing on, pointing in the wrong direction. This one overlaps a little bit, but, tips for, leveling up in business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the key is, if you want to, in terms of career progression, it is a lot about your own brand as well. Like, how do you, maybe it's advice for your younger self, is building your brand is really important and staying quite true to that. So who do you want to be? How do you want people to view you? I think is really important. And I've always thought I want to be someone that, as I said, does what they say they're going to do, and helping people. When you say you're going to help someone, genuinely following through with that. And, so I think build your brand, help people, when they ask for it, because as you say, you don't know when you might need help back. And be curious to what other parts of the business do and and learn about other parts of the business, because I think it's a really important skill.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. Now, definition of success. I get into some philosophical questions later in this, but what's success to you? And then I suppose, what is success and how are you working towards achieving it?
Yeah, it's a good
And this can be personal life, work, sort of the general question.
It's a good question. Look, I think at the end of the day, having, bringing your family up, I think is really important as well. And watching your kids grow, and as good humans, I think is really important. You want to make just sure that the people that you bring up are good humans, and you set a good example for people. So I think success is about, are you setting the right example for the people around you? How do people view you? Are you someone that's an enabler? Are you and do you have a wider circle of friends and people that are important to you? So that is success. Obviously, work success is really important, and you want to make sure that being competitive, that I am, that work is successful. But it feels like you are doing the right thing by people, and that everyone's kind of winning, I think, to me is what a success is.
So you're focused on team success as well as personal.
Absolutely. Well, playing AFL and cricket, they're individual sports by themselves, but at the end of the day, the team's got to win, and you like celebrating as a team. I think winning is I played a lot of golf too as a kid, but it's much better winning as a team than winning individually, I think.
How is the golf game going?
Terribly. With young kids, not well at all. So, no, it's a bit non-existent, but, I've got plenty of time to get into that.
You can do it at the back end.
Exactly.
Now, legacy. What's legacy you're leaving?
Yeah.
When you leave UBS, what have you left behind?
Yeah, well, I hope you still think that I'm a good person. It's really just making sure that I think, when you leave, you've set a really good platform up for the next. I've got a junior who works for me, the next generation. I think I really enjoy actually giving back to the younger people who've joined. You see the enthusiasm and the hunger they have when they start, and they're like sponges, right? They just want to learn. So it's about building a really sustainable platform and business for them that you become kind of the go-to in whatever market you're in, and then you've left a great business that you've built. I mean, you were part of that business, sort of building it from scratch is really, I've enjoyed that process of building a business and then creating something that is sustainable.
It's funny that natural empathy you get because your kids start coming through, right? Like I'm on in early 20s and you're getting up towards sort of that sort of university-ish. You just get that empathy and you want to help out.
Yeah.
It's
nice to know you can give back.
Quick fire questions. I quite like this one. First job, and I want you to go as young as you need to go.
Bartender at the local pub.
You must have had a job before that.
Do
some dishes at home or something.
Mowing my neighbours' lawns or their tennis court actually was my first proper job where I got paid for.
Gotcha. How's the bartending?
It was good fun. It was a lot of fun, but you can't do it forever.
It's one of those jobs though that's going through uni. It's a job you can get, right? You earn a couple of dollars.
Yeah.
Piece of advice for your younger self?
Stay focused. Be competitive. And don't give up. I think that's the key. Persistence is really important.
Yep. But on that front, when you hit a bump, things go bad. What do you do the next day?
My view is that the next day was always going to be different. So you can't look. I had a view that you can't look back. You know that if you continue to look in the past, it's difficult. It took me a long time to get a job. At UBS, and I just kept calling. It was real persistence to just do that. So I think that's what I'd continue to promote.
Motivates you most as a person?
Look, I mean, winning is probably not the right word, but just doing the right thing every day, succeeding at work, making sure that you're giving good outcomes to people is what kind of gets me up in the morning, and providing for my family is important.
Brilliant. What are your tips for driving long-term wealth?
It's an interesting one because we've all had, I think you learn a lot from some of the things, from buying call options as a kid at uni, thinking that was the easiest way to make money, and learning a lesson from that. So I think, I think having, a core portfolio of equities that's longer term, and making sure you don't, you stay the course with that, because I think, compounding is always going to get you over the line, but also taking some risks. I think, you do need to have, as you mentioned, a portfolio of non-correlated assets, I think is more and more important. So I think it's about, kind of long-term investing, but also looking outside the square for investments, is important, whether it be property or whether it be, alternates, but that's what I think is, and staying the course.
It's funny you say about uni call options. I remember at uni, the barrier options? Barrier options can be dangerous.
Yes.
When you hit the barrier, all your money's gone.
That's right. You always think you're a genius when you get the first one right.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make when it comes to building wealth, and why?
Oh, I think it's probably chasing the latest, fad or great idea. I think is the hardest. I think sometimes you've actually got to look the opposite way that the crowd is looking. I think that's really important. I think, a lot of trades are momentum based now, but I think if you think differently and, you stay the course, I think that's really important. But I think the biggest mistake is buying, whatever's the hot new idea.
The fads.
Yeah, correct.
The taxi driver mentions it. Could be a good trade, but it's probably not.
Too late.
When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time? You've obviously mentioned golf. You got a young family.
Yeah, so I love spending time with my kids. That's I get a lot out of that, going to kids sport and watching them play is something I really enjoy. And then I love skiing. Any sport. I'm really keen to and trying to stay fit.
Is the boy still doing AFL?
He is, but he's just gone away for 6 months. So he's gone to Glengarry. So he's gone to camp for 6 months. So he won't be playing AFL this year, but he plays rugby in AFL.
He's going to become a man.
That's the
boy,
plan.
you come back a
That's
man.
the plan. That's the plan. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, very good. Well, thanks for coming on, Ed. I really appreciate you coming on. Anyone who wants to get in contact with Ed, jump onto LinkedIn and to connect with him, but really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Trav.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.